then it's just a showing. There's nothing coming towards me. There's nothing to defend. So there's no attack. It's just like okay. And welcome to Awakening Through Love, the podcast. My name's Rod Gordon.
And my name's Martina Hughes. So today's topic is trust. Trust is a topic that comes up a lot in working with people, and we often have a lot of questions about trust. So we don't have a specific question that we're working with today, but overall, why is trust important in intimate relationships and how to bring some understanding to trust? So before we go there, would you like to share what trust means?
Yeah, I think that's where we should begin because I've asked literally hundreds, if not thousands of people this question. I've only ever had it answered once. But what does trust mean? Like, not what does it mean to you? What does it mean experientially? But what does it literally mean? It's very hard to cultivate something if we don't know what it means. That includes for, people being trustable, but also how do we trust another person? And so the simplest explanation or the simplest definition of the meaning is literally believing without knowing. So believing without knowing. Yeah. And believing without knowing, we can choose to believe. So I've often heard that trust is a choice, and people are like, well, how do I choose to trust? And it's the way that we do that is we choose to believe. Choose to believe in, whether it's our partner doing what they say they'll do, choosing to believe that they'll return to love, choosing whatever the choice is in the moment.
Beautiful. So that choice to believe, what effect would that have on an intimate relationship when someone chooses to believe, when they choose to trust? What's the experience of that?
That's a big question, Sweet. Like for me specifically as a man, yeah,
sure,
because
it's
different for women than it is to men in lots of ways. In workshops and like retreats and facilitation space, quite often women have no desire to be trusted. They don't care about that at all. Like not always, but often. But for a man, it's a very different experience. Being trusted for me feels like love. So when you trust me, I feel that in my body as love. Like when you say I love you, it feels good. It's nice. But I trust you feels way deeper, way more loving, way more like, oh. But it's also being trusted is inspiring. It calls me to be like it calls me to desire that experience more of being trusted. So then to do that, I have to become more trustable, whatever that looks like, sticking to my word, only, follow through with what I say I'm going to do. If I make a mistake, own it. Like it calls me to look for ways and opportunities to be trustable. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so that inspiration of being trusted, as that love rips through my body, the desire to be more trustable grows with that experience. And so then it becomes a bit of a journey in many ways, a journey towards love for men and for women. Because for a woman, and we'll speak to that in a sec, is a very important experience. And in some ways for men, you'll be quite surprised at the impact of our trustability or lack of trustability that it has on a woman's nervous system, but also what that actually does in her life. But for me, being trusted, it's such an important part of my experience, but also the experience of being trustable, aligning with my values, integrity, living in alignment with that is so rich, so beautiful. It increases the quality of my life. So I feel happier, if you want, when I'm in alignment with my integrity.
Yeah.
So when I'm in integrity, is this feeling of being impeccable in my trustability. And it's that impeccable quality that increases the value of life. It's not that I'm just trustable in certain situations or with certain people or in certain areas of life. It's like I'm impeccable in that when I'm on my own, in those quiet moments when I could, get away with something or, do something, I don't know, whatever it is, and not choosing not to, holding myself accountable, living in alignment with those that my chosen value of being trustable and being in integrity actually creates inspiration and love in my own body. It elevates the quality of my life experience. And so being trustable is such an important foundational piece of intimate relationships, specifically for men.
So you mentioned a number of ways that a man and you yourself can be trustable. You mentioned, keeping to your word and that follow through and so on. I feel like they were mentioned, but it would be good to dive into those things. Like, what does trustability, what's it look like? What's the practical application of that in your life and for other men to understand? Because I feel like it's so intrinsic to you that we need to tease it out a little bit more for people listening.
Yeah, right. I don't even know what to say to that. You just do it.
So,
what else is there?
so staying true to your word, being in integrity with your word. How does that create trustability? Let's start there. How is that specifically something that creates trustability in a relationship?
It allows the feminine nervous system to relax. Trustability creates safety. If I'm consistent in who I am and who I'm being and I'm trustable, then like your nervous system can totally let go of any friction, of any tension. You know that I'm going to do what I say I was going to do. And if I don't do that, it's going to be for a reason. That I'm choosing something that's more valuable or more in alignment for you, for me, for us, for the relationship. If I do something outside of what I said I'm going to do, it's for a reason. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So the practical piece, like it's being trustable doesn't always feel good. So like, in the last 70 years or so, men have been encouraged so deeply to feel and there's a lot of attachment on their feelings that they mean something, that they're important, that it's their identity of who they can be, an identity of who people become. But there's an immersion in the sensory experience that is actually incredibly untrustable to another. If I'm willing to indulge my feelings in any moment, regardless of what they are, it's completely untrustable. What if I desire to have sex with another woman? What if I desire to spend all our money on motorbikes? Had to think of something real. Like if I follow my desires and impulses, I'm completely untrustable as a man.
And does that also include, because we've spoken about equanimity in recent episodes, so does that untrustability also, and what you're speaking to with feelings, does it correlate with reactivity?
It can do, yeah. Like if I'm immersed in my own sensations and desires and feelings in my own body and I want to chase that gratification in any way, then it's going to be to the exclusion of whoever's around me. I'm only interested in that moment in how I feel. It's an incredibly selfish or self-centered way to be. And so when all my attention's only on me to the exclusion of the other, then no one around me is safe because I'll do whatever feels good in the moment.
Yeah.
Completely untrustable.
Yeah. And not that this happens in our relationship, but I can feel like even just talking about it, how my body goes, at the excuse me, there's a contraction, there's a closure. Obviously it hit my throat as well, but there's a contraction even at the idea of you pursuing those impulses and feelings for the sake of it.
Yeah, for the sake of my own gratification. Yeah. So it's completely untrustable in intimate relationship, especially for a man. And so and that's what I mean by it doesn't always feel good to be trustable. because I have to follow what I know will allow me to become the man that I want to be, or to create the experience that I want to create, or to show up for you the way that I want to show up for you. Like, being trustable means that I'm going to have to be a no for things that my body's craving and wants to be a yes for. You know, if I've said to you, hey, yeah, I'll be here Saturday night and we'll hang out, but then, you know, someone rings and says, hey, let's go and do this. If I just turn around and go and do the thing, and then you're abandoned in that, it's such an unsafe space to be in. And so for me, saying no to the other thing, it may be something I've always wanted to do, always wanted to go to, whatever the experience is. And so I have to be willing to sit with the pain of that loss and the hurt and the discomfort to honor my word. Being in integrity does not feel good. Like, not like it does afterward, like retrospectively, it's like, oh yeah, I'm so glad I did that. And quite often it can feel good, but it doesn't mean it always feels good. There is times when being in integrity hurts. It's painful. It means we perceive ourselves to be losing something, to be not having an experience or something we want or desire. And so that's where the equanimity piece with our desires is so important. It's okay to desire things, and can we release the grip on that desire and be happy with it, happy without it, to just feel the desire. And so to feel that pain and that discomfort or the hurt from whatever the situation is, it's not easy to be with. And culturally, we're not taught how to feel. So most people don't know how to be with their feelings. They'll know how to talk about them, but if they're talking about them, they're not feeling them. So to actually be immersed so deeply in the experience, but also to feel that pain, the nuance of that discomfort, the sadness, the vulnerability, the hurt, the loss, to be able to allow myself to be with all of that and to not have it pulling on my attention as well, to be, okay, that's how it feels to be in integrity in this moment.
Yeah. And something that just came up for me that I'd like to include here is that it doesn't mean always being a yes to what your partner wants. So from my perspective, one of the things that makes you trustable to me is that I know that you have the capacity to say no.
Absolutely.
And so I just wanted to make that distinction here, because a trustable man is one who has equal access to no and yes in a relationship. And that there's a sense of the things that you're aligning to, the things that your integrity is aligned with, is a sense of what will be of greater service to the relationship, to what's happening in that moment.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So the other thing, because you used the word impeccable, and I wanted to also point out that impeccable doesn't mean that a man has to be perfect, because I think this can be a trap for women, is expecting their men to be perfect, and it can cause a lot of confusion and turmoil and upsets in relationship, expecting someone to be perfect. So
it's actually the opposite. Yeah. Like, trusting a man doesn't mean that he behaves the way you want. Sorry, because that's really unlikely. I shouldn't laugh, but it's true. But it does come up a lot. And for a man to be trustable doesn't mean that he doesn't break trust, doesn't break your trust, doesn't break his word. He will. Trust can be broken thousands of times in a relationship, and it can be reestablished thousands of times in a relationship. Breaking trust doesn't matter. What we do with it matters. What we do with the experience matters. And so, like, if I break trust, say I'm going to do something and I don't do it, if I come to you and I start to make excuses, feel how weak and mushy and gross that is.
Yeah, and for the people who are listening and not watching, my whole body just contracted.
Yeah, and so there's there's nothing that requires a man to be perfect.
Mm-mm.
Impeccable means his orientation towards trust is consistent. He will always orientate towards the deepest awareness that he has in the moment.
Mm.
And so a man needs to be able to make mistakes like
Mm.
every day,
Mm-hmm.
constantly making mistakes without being punished.
Mm.
Otherwise, like if a man breaks trust or does something wrong and he gets, yelled at or abused or whatever like that, and
Scolded like a little
scolded,
boy.
yeah, told off and told how he's wrong and not good enough and what he's doing shit and all that sort of stuff. It's for a man who's trying to learn to be trustable, it's kind of the equivalent of clubbing baby seals. It's just you're beating him before he's had a chance to actually get up and walk to build some momentum. And so trust doesn't mean a man won't break trust. Trust means that a man will break trust.
Mm.
And the trust piece has to be I trust him to come back into alignment with who he is.
Mm-hmm.
I trust him that he's made this mistake, that he'll rectify it.
Mm-hmm.
If a man makes the same mistake 3, 4, 5 times, okay, now we really need a conversation. But like if he's making that mistake in different ways each time,
Mm-hmm.
then he's trying to learn. And part of the way that men learn to navigate, especially relationships, life, purpose, it's a case of like do something, bump into the wall, go, right, that's not it. I'm going to do this. Trundle along, boom, hit something else in there. Because it's like navigating in the dark. It's like being in a black cave full of boulders. So life's this thing we have to navigate. And so making the mistakes, it's a requirement to become trustable because he has to have the full bodied experience of doing the wrong thing, so to speak, to find the right thing.
Mm.
And so for him to not have the space to do that sets up this toxic, abusive kind of cycle where he will constantly feel trapped because there's no room for him to breathe. There's no room for him to make mistakes. Whereas, and like some men will just, take a person's trust and just use as an excuse not to show up. But that's not the kind of man we're talking about here. We're talking about somebody who's involved in this kind of work, who's looking, strongly in personal growth and self-development. Somebody's on a path of awakening. Many people aren't, and that's okay.
Yeah.
It's not their role to do those things. So if you are one of those people, then yeah, there needs to be space in the relationship for him to make mistakes, and then he will thrive. Because if instead of getting beaten on every time he makes a mistake, he's just like left some space just to sort of sit with the discomfort of what's happened, and then he has to find his way, not told what to do or how to do it. Let him find his way, because that's the muscle that needs to be trained to be trustable. He needs to know how to course correct. He needs to know how to reorientate after making a mistake. He needs to know how to feel in the pain and the hurt and the discomfort we cause others when we break trust. He needs to sit and feel that. Whereas if he's getting shamed and abused and he feels like shit inside, some part of him eventually just goes, yeah, stuff it. I don't even care anymore. And he'll just let it go, and then he won't try. And so over years, that's where a lot of men end up. Is this they feel like they're being beaten up by their women. They're not trustable. They're not interested in the relationship. They're not interested in making an effort. They lose interest in everything. And so for a man to navigate relationships successfully, there needs to be space for him to make mistakes and to make adjustments. And I think we've spoken about this in other podcasts. Like if the person who's, the woman, say in a heterosexual relationship, if he breaks trust and your capacity to rage at him is 10, then when he is in integrity and he is in trust, are you showering him with a 10 of love and devotion and gratitude and appreciation? Because if you're not, there's a huge imbalance in the relationship. It's really important that our capacity for, expression of anger or emotions or feelings or whatever you want to call those things, our capacity to express that needs to be equal to our capacity for gratitude, love, and appreciation. because if it's not, that imbalance will poison the relationship. It won't succeed.
Yeah.
And so it's really important to, when a man is trustable, and in some ways as men, we're not that different to puppies. I know that sounds off in some ways, but it's true. Because we're really, really, men are really simple. It's like, if you like the behavior, show him how it feels in your body. Show him how much you love it. Show him how grateful you are. Because his brain is really simple. He'll go, this behavior good. Okay, more of this. It's literally that simple. And so if that's not online and we only get the negative,
Yes.
then being in integrity is just not worth it, because it costs so much to the man already. Being trustable already hurts so much that if the only reward for doing it is nothing, or you get beaten up when you're not in it, it's not enough. It's not sustainable. There's nothing available in that relationship for that man. It's barren for him. And a lot of men seem like they're enduring intimate relationship. They're struggling through, and it's because what he needs is so often not available in intimate relationship. And so men lose interest really quickly.
Yeah.
And you can see that culturally. Like, men quite often don't want to be in relationships, want to spend long periods of time with friends or away from partners. It's just purely because what they need in that intimate relationship is not available. And they need to be trusted.
Yeah.
But they also need to be working towards being trustable.
Yeah.
So it's a double-edged sword. There's no one doing the wrong thing, but culturally together we're doing a terrible job.
Yeah. And I just want to speak to the women listening, how you can share your hurt, your pain, your upset in the moment without blame and shame. Because it's very common. Let's say if I said to Rod, I can't believe you did that. Immediately I'm like pushing something onto him. There's a sense of trying to make him wrong or make him feel shameful, which is me avoiding what's there in my body. So instead, if something's happened and I feel that trust is broken, it's to go inside and feel the pain. And then it could be as simple as ouch, or it could be tears running down my face, or it could be no. But it's to allow the effect of what's happening, to allow whatever that moment of broken trust is to be felt through my body, so that it's an expression through my body rather than me looking to correct or educate or coach Rod. Because if there's any part of me that goes into correcting, educating, coaching Rod, the other thing that I'm doing is I'm mothering him. I'm assuming that he can't work it out for himself. I'm assuming that he needs to be told what's right and wrong. And so many women do experience upsets in relationship around feeling like they're mothering their partner. Typically what happens if mothering is arising, it's because we're not trusting our men. And in those moments of not trusting, there can be a micromanaging or trying to control his actions or responses. And I know for me, times where I've felt micromanaged, like let's say in a work situation, if I've had a boss looking over my shoulder, guarantee they're the times that I drop something on the floor, that I make a mistake, that I don't add up the numbers correctly. Like, as soon as I'm being micromanaged or there's any sense of control, I'll make a mistake. And the same thing is true for intimate relationship. If there's no trust, if it's all about controlling the moment, controlling our partners, things get more clumsy and clunky and awkward and harder to navigate. So in those moments for women, like if you feel that trust is broken, you don't have to tell him what to do. You don't have to tell him how to do things differently. You don't have to tell him how to love you. The thing that he will respond to most strongly is the expression of feelings through your body. Like if I was just, ow, 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 in a moment, what would your response be?
Curious.
Yeah. Yeah. And so as soon as Rod's curious, then there's space between us. There's love between us.
Mm. Yeah. And there was the emotions that you mentioned, anger wasn't present. Can you speak to how people can be angry without projecting that onto their partner? Because you left
Yeah.
that one out, and I feel like there's going to be a lot of people out there that are like, well, hang on, my man's done this. Well, I can't be angry. I've got to be sad, or I've got to be hurt or say ouch. Like there was no
Sure.
option there for anger. So I'm curious.
Yeah, thank you. So with the anger, it's first of all, feel the burn, because anger moves fast. And so because it moves fast, it often turns into words of hate and resentment and lashing out, which is not supportive or conducive. And we turn back to shame and blame then. Our postman just made a sound, so I just jumped. So coming back to the anger, it's like feel the burn, feel that desire to react, but feel underneath it. And then you might just go, and let that ripple through the body. Or it could be, no, but allowing the anger to ripple through the body as a roar, as a no, as a stamping of the foot, as an expression on the face, as a fire through the body. The whole body is speaking, and I'm not pushing my feelings onto Rod. I'm not making him responsible for my feelings. It's like, this is my response in this moment. I'm not attempting to change him, control him, even to have anything be different. I'm simply just relishing this fire that's moving through my body and giving it sound and movement and letting it be felt.
Yeah.
What effect does that have on you?
Again, just curiosity.
Yeah.
Because when anger is displayed through the body and you're showing me that you feel angry, then it's just a showing. There's nothing coming towards me. There's nothing to defend. So there's no attack. It's just like okay, what I'm doing is having this impact on her right now. So when there's nothing coming towards me and there's no need to defend and there's no attack, there's also a sense for me of feeling safe in my body, safe in my nervous system, which allows me to still be available for how you feel. So being available for how you feel is being present. So I can be present to my own discomfort. I can be present to your hurt and pain and discomfort, and I can stay in the moment. If anger is coming with blame or some kind of shaming or directed at me, my body's natural impulse is to protect itself. And so most people aren't consciously aware that their emotions are flaring in that moment, that their mind's racing and creating scenarios and stories, that's inflaming the emotions more, and then their desire to react. And so then their reaction is like, oh, this is how I react when I'm angry. Whereas when all that happens, it destroys the intimacy. Whereas when you show me how you feel through sound, movement, expression, through you actually feeling it, because of the mirror neurons in the body, when you feel the anger and the hurt and the pain that's under that, my body registers that, which means, okay, I know something's happening here and I can be here with you in that experience. And then I can actually navigate that experience. I can unpack it. I can actually be with it long enough that I don't need to react to it. Whereas, like you said, anger moves so quickly. The impulse is if one person becomes angry, the other person becomes more angry and then more angry. We have this escalation that sort of happens. And so allowing the display of how you feel allows me to be curious and to stay with you while you feel, which allows your feelings to be seen, your feelings to be heard, which is a very different experience when you can show that you're angry and then I can be, hey, I'm here, I love you, what's happening? And my curiosity is present and I'm willing to look for ways that I could do something different. That's so, well, you tell me, how does that feel in your nervous system?
It feels safe. It feels trustable. It feels like being loved.
Yeah.
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 And that's the immediate restoration of trust. It's like if I've just roared because trust was broken, and then you lean in and be curious about how I feel, then bang, love's back online, trust back online.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's literally that simple. It's not easy to not react to the emotional experience in the body, and the desire is to react. And angry reactions barely ever create anything beautiful. So they certainly don't restore love.
Yeah.
They create distance between couples and people, they create hurt. So for me to be available in there, the emotions need to be felt first, and then allowed to ripple out through the body as they are.
Yeah. And just make it clear for people listening is that when Rod says angry reaction, he means like the lashing out, the blame, the shame, the drawing up into your mind and creating scenarios, compared to the difference between feeling it in the body and showing it through the whole body and having that be an in the moment experience, not coming back the next day and going, rah!
Oh, yeah, that won't work.
Because then there's no sense of what it's in relation to.
Yeah.
But I could feel even before when I was demonstrating, it's like I could feel like I was demonstrating that raw. And at the same time, I could feel Rod's body more upright, more erect, more responsive, because there's that part of him that's like, oh, what's going on here? It is the number one thing that men respond to is seeing that responsiveness in a woman's body.
Yeah. And I think also, like what you touched on before, is that what's most common is that people think their anger is justified, so they're allowed to be it. So they become that anger. But in becoming that anger, there's there's taking the lid off the boiling pot of steam, which is what most people's expression is. But the action, like acting angrily, is more of a reaction to feeling anger and whatever's sitting under it, because it'll always be more under anger. It doesn't exist on its own. And that reaction to anger is what creates the separation and the distance. Whereas feeling the anger and just allowing it to just burn in your body, there's a big difference between those two. And so actually just sitting and feeling the discomfort of the feeling rather than reacting to it, because quite often people have a sense of like, oh, this shouldn't have happened to me. Why would you do that to me? Like all these sorts of things that intensifies that reaction, that self-identification. So to untether those, we need to tease it apart a little bit.
Yeah.
And so the first thing to do is to actually sit with all that anger and just know that that's how you're experiencing the moment. It's not because something's happening to you, but when this behavior happens, anger rises in the body. So then be with that anger. Where does it emanate from? Where does it come from? What experience in your life has allowed you to give permission to act angrily in these situations? And start to tease that apart. Where does that come from? Where does that sit in the body? What's the truth about this experience?
Yes. And one of the things I'm remembering just now is a great analogy that one of our teachers, London Winters, gave to me. And it was the distinction between talking about how you feel, being like reading the weather report, compared to showing how you feel, being like watching the storm. It's like, would you prefer to read the weather report or watch the storm? And it's like, we would all prefer to watch the storm. So allowing that responsiveness in the body is the watching of the storm. And there's something in it that is really freeing and liberating for a woman, allowing that to move. It's also a display of trust. Like, I trust myself enough for my feelings to move. I trust my partner enough for my feelings to move and be seen. I don't have to withdraw into my mind and protect myself and analyze it all and work it all out. It's like, I trust enough to put all of this on the table, what's moving through my body in this moment. Yeah, so that's how women show trust to a man. It's like, show him your feelings, show him the truth of your heart, show him what sits underneath, rather than relating from the mind or riding over the top of your feelings.
Yeah, beautiful.
And the reason that the trust is so important is because it requires trust for a woman's body to open. Without trust, there's no openness in a woman's body. So what I mean by that is, like, when there's no trust, the heart will be closed, the belly will be tight, the vagina will be closed. There'll be a sense of no opening for connection, for love, for sexual intimacy. When trust is missing, everything closes down in a woman's body.
Yeah. And it's probably the greatest thing men can do for their sexual intimacy in a relationship is be trustable. That will open her more than anything else that you can do.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Which requires you to be present and impeccable in your word.
Yeah.
But that will evoke your partner's sexual desire. It's that piece right there. That's the missing piece.
Yeah. And I want to say, for women who are in long-term relationships who are going, how do I show my feelings? What if my partner reacts to my feelings? What if, I roar and he walks away? For breaking the patterns, my words are clumsy. Breaking the patterns in long-term relationships, sometimes it's going to be painful. So for a woman, there might be moments, if it's the very first time you show your feelings, maybe he does react, maybe he walks away. And the medicine is for you to stay with your feelings. Let him walk away. Let him react. You stay with your feelings. And over time, the more a woman allows herself space for her feelings and she honors her feelings, then either the man becomes more curious and his response changes, or at some point, maybe it becomes that the relationship falls away. But the woman's role in that showing of the feelings is like, keep feeling through the pain, through the discomfort, through the ouch, and keep showing up with your feelings available, because that's the medicine that's needed.
Absolutely.
Is there anything else you'd like to share from that perspective when it comes to that breaking of a pattern in a long-term relationship, if there's pattern of reactivity between two people?
Yeah, the challenge with patterns of reactivity is that both partners' reactivity gives the other partner permission to be reactive. So, you could have a conscious conversation and both work together towards not being more reactive. Or if your partner's not into that, then you will just have to take that journey on your own and start to become less reactive, which means having more awareness around when your feelings are arising, how they arise in your body, how they move through your body, and being with that. Whether you're a man listening to this or a woman listening to this, it doesn't matter. But it's that spaciousness, and we need to create that space. probably one of the best ways to create that space is meditation. It allows so much more room for the emotions. I would say jump onto Intimacy Oasis,
Yes.
because there you can actually learn all these techniques, but also learn how to feel, how to express in this way. You can share the information with your partner and then have a discussion about it. So you can create this space by doing something like that. There's lots of downloadable stuff. There's heaps of meditations. There's heaps of couples practices. So there's lots of stuff in there that would support this. But for me, like explaining this to people and how to show your feelings, it's kind of like when I was in, say, the 80s, 90s, it's like you wouldn't go to a counselor or a psychologist because if you did, you were crazy. Whereas if you start roaring and making all these sounds, people are going to think you're crazy. It's kind of like that back then. Like there's no permission in our culture for people to feel. Like I know culturally men shut down women's feelings, but if you spend time and you watch, you'll find that women also shut down women's feelings. And there's men and women are shutting down people's feelings. So there's a lot of talk about creating space for men's feelings, creating space for women's feelings, but there's not a lot of skill in the application of allowing space for feelings. And so learning to create that space internally allows us to learn how to create that experience externally for another's feelings. So it has to begin within. And so we have to turn our attention to creating that space. If we're highly charged and highly emotionally reactive, there's a real chance that our body's full. It's full of emotion, hurts, resentments. At points, if someone's highly reactive, it points their attention to there's a lot of unresolved stuff going on in their body. They're not present. And this, when I say present, emotionally current, they're not emotionally in the moment. They're reacting to something that's been historical and that's built up over time from how they perceive they've been treated or have been treated or whatever. But that doesn't have to guide your reality forever. It will for a time, but that can change. And we have to allow that change. But that requires us to do something different. And this is where most personal growth stuff falls down. Everyone wants to grow and change as long as they can still be the same. And it doesn't work. You have to be willing to become a completely different person. And so giving yourself that permission to begin with also gives the people around you permission to become different. And it's really beautiful. Like, you know, one of the ways I first saw this is anytime I read a book or did a workshop or came back from something and I was different, my friends would be like, "Oh, you've different, you've changed." And it was like a bad thing. It doesn't matter whether it's a good change or not. It was just always, you're different, it's bad. And I still feel that energy, if you want to call it energy, or that perception sort of just sitting unconsciously in the culture, just sort of sits below the surface a little bit. It's become almost a little bit normal. And so we have to be willing to feel that discomfort of changing because it impacts every single person around us. But that's what makes life so different when we change, is because people can't respond to us the same way when we become totally different to how we were yesterday. They can't respond the way they did yesterday anymore because that behavior, that person is essentially not there. So allowing space internally to change and to become different.
Yeah, absolutely. And that then even speaks to another deeper layer of trust, and that is that the trust in life itself, that I can change and be okay. Like I can create internal change and life is okay. So that sense of trusting, believing without knowing that change is something we can choose.
And so I want to circle back as we spoke a lot about trust and men being trustable and what they can do to be trustable, which is really just simple. Like do what you say you're going to do. We just want to sum it down real simple. But what we didn't speak to is the cultural habit of looking for what's untrustable in men.
Yes, that's so true. Yeah, good point. So it's really, really common because there's been so much in our media and information of, like, you know, ways that men have been untrustable, but women become conditioned to look for untrustable qualities in men. It's almost like coming back to that kind of collective thing. It's like it's normal to look for the reasons that men are untrustable. And it's like tuning in to a specific radio frequency. It's like, oh yeah, men are not trustable because there's this violence or this act or there's this going on in the world. But it means that women aren't seeing men as individuals. They aren't seeing men as the man in front of them. So it's necessary for women to learn how to change that radio station. So what I mean by that is to begin actively cultivating reasons to trust men, to look around and go, oh, I notice how he's always punctual. Oh, I notice how deeply he loves his partner. Oh, I notice how strongly he shows up for his children. When women begin to notice trustable qualities, and I often give this practice to women who are single, because if they start to notice trustable qualities in men in their lives generally, then it helps them to magnetize men who are trustable in for an intimate relationship. And this can happen inside of a relationship as well. If you've been fixated or obsessing, because that can be something that I know happens for me and can happen for a lot of women, it can be a tendency to obsess on what's wrong, what's not trustable, what's not flowing. But again, changing that radio station to where is he trustable? What is he doing that's trustable? And again, that comes down to choice of looking for reasons to trust rather than looking for reasons to not trust. And it can be a little addictive too, I think, for women, getting stuck in that pattern of not trusting, because it allows a woman, it's a little bit that justified anger that you referenced before. It's like keeping herself separate, not opening her body. So then choosing to trust is making a different choice. It's like being able to show up and actually see who's in front of you and see the qualities that are trustable, because that is what will inspire a man more than anything else.
To become more trustable.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. But I think too, even like for women who are like struggling in intimate relationship, if that trust isn't available or accessible in the body, then her own experience of intimate relationship will be the same as what's happening inside her body. So if that closure to trust is there, or to men, and you're closing down the front of the body towards that, your experience of intimate relationship will always be that something's missing, that there's more available, and that, you know, there's something wrong with the man because you don't feel the way that you want to feel. But the truth is that work has to be done internally. That opening has to happen from within for a man to see it. He needs to be able to respond to it. It needs to happen first. So there needs to be an openness in the body to call in a trustable man. Like I know for me, like I've spent so many years of my life cultivating trustability, like since I was really young. And don't get me wrong, I've screwed it heaps of times, and there's plenty of evidence for that.
Including on earlier episodes of the podcast.
Oh, was there? I can't remember.
When you shared your story.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I can't remember.
Don't worry, I've distracted you.
Yeah, I forgot what I was talking about.
You were saying about you've been cultivating trustability from a young age.
Yeah. So, and that doesn't mean I was trustable. It just means I was intentionally trying to learn how to be trustable. And I forgot where I was going with that.
So cultivating trustability from a young age. So then your desire to be trusted.
Yeah. What I notice is, because I'd spent so much time working my ass off to be trustable, is that when I wasn't trusted by women, I just had no interest in spending time there with them at all. Because the hurt and the pain of not being trusted, when I clearly was, you know, trustable in whatever area, in a conversation or whatever, it kind of felt disgusting. It repelled, and it was repulsive, not as in they were repulsive, but I was pushed away. So like a pulse of energy pushing me back. That's what it feels like in my body. So if a woman isn't trustable, isn't trusting, then trustable men will walk on by because we feel it.
Yes.
And it hurts. It feels really uncomfortable. It feels really unsafe. I know I'm going to be controlled and manipulated and abused, and I just don't want it. And so for women who are, whether you're in a relationship or looking for a relationship, having that capacity online has such a profound impact on your partner. So it will call trust in an intimate relationship because the man will want more of that experience.
Yes.
He'll want to feel trusted. And so that evokes that desire. But for women who are single, if that trust isn't there, the trustable men will just keep walking on by. Yeah. And the truth is, with our own habits and behaviors, that we can polarize people into being something they're not. Like if a man's trustable and you treat him as untrustworthy, at some point he'll go, what is the point of me doing all this stuff to be trustable when she just still doesn't trust me? I may as well just do whatever I want because I'm just going to cop shit no matter what. So he'll turn away from that at some point. He will give up because it seems pointless. And when something's pointless, like a masculine hearted man is purpose driven, which means if there's no purpose, no point to what he's doing, he won't do it anymore. He'll start to turn his attention elsewhere. And so he'll take up more hobbies, spend more time with friends, take up more sports, go and do more things because he really wants to be somewhere else. He wants to be around people that trust him.
Yeah, beautiful.
Yeah. So it's a really important part of both partners' experience is the intention to be trustable and the intention to trust. Yeah.
And I want to say for women, and because I've had such a massive journey with this myself, to do the inner work so that as you learn to feel, to hold yourself in your feelings, that you begin cultivating a sense of trust and okayness so that you can show your feelings, so that you can open your body to a man, so that you can allow energy, life, feelings to move through you. And at times it will feel excruciating. At times it will feel painful. And they're the times that we need to keep leaning in and opening and allowing those feelings to move through our body.
Yeah. We can't use our hurt and our pain and our wounds as an excuse not to trust. And we can't use our hurt and our pain and our wounds as an excuse not to be trustable.
Yeah. And on one level, actually, this is a question I've never asked you, but
that's a surprise.
Let's
you could be hearing rain in the background too. Podcasting from home. Sorry.
But do you feel that a woman's sexual openness is part of the reason that a man craves a woman's sexual openness? Is it because it's a display of trust?
That's a good question. I think there's more to it. I think that's definitely a part of it. To say it's not doesn't feel right. To say it's the only reason doesn't feel right. But a woman's sexual openness is an invitation into her. And that is an incredibly trustable act to allow another human to be inside your body. Yes. Such a vulnerable experience sexually for women. I can't imagine it. And when I do, it doesn't feel good. I don't want to imagine a man inside me. I really threw myself off there.
I feel less bad about distracting you because you can distract yourself so easily.
Oh, I can. Spend hours doing that. But yeah, it's such a vulnerable act to allow someone inside of you, but it's such an enticing invitation for a man. There's something about it that the body craves, but also spirit craves. There's emotionally craving. There's a desire on so many levels when it comes sexually to an interaction with a woman from a man's perspective. But being trusted in that way, yeah, it feels really good because it's like it's like an opening flower.
Yes.
It's just sort of inspires you to hold it and to love it. It's really beautiful. And that's what that opening is to me. It's that invitation to, if she's letting go, then she's allowing me to hold her. And being trusted in that way, it's just really delicious.
Yeah. And I can feel in my body, it's like the difference between being sexually available and withholding trust means that then if I'm withholding trust, the sexual intimacy will feel more mechanical and functional.
Yeah.
Whereas if I'm sexually open and trust is flowing, then it's like the rains just fell down from the sky.
Yeah. Yeah. Being sexually open and sexually available are two very different things, and they're commonly mistaken. That's what I see is people that are available for different sexual experiences, different relationship experiences. Yes, they're sexually available. There's an openness there, but it's more mental openness rather than body openness. And body openness feels experientially incredibly different. There's always something missing from the head version that the body doesn't get.
Yeah. And it's like that sense of love and trust is fully available. Love and trust is totally flowing, so it goes much deeper in the sexual intimacy.
Yeah, because when we're that open, we're exposing ourselves emotionally, mentally, spiritually, like we're opening on all levels. That's very different to being, my body's available for sex.
Yes.
They're not the same.
Yeah.
One's a spiritual experience in some ways, and another one's body mechanics. And don't get me wrong, the body mechanics one can be pleasurable. It'll certainly relieve stored pressure in the body, and it won't fundamentally change anything.
Yeah.
It'll just be the next craving or the next desire. Whereas with openness, there's a surrender that permeates the whole of our humanity. The openness becomes openness towards everything, because the openness is love emanating from our bodies, and that love shows up towards our pets, towards our friends, our intimate partner, our families, to any interaction we have. Buying a coffee, that love will come through, like who we are in that openness. Like we can go down the street, go, I want a decaf latte, please, because that's what I drink. That's kind of,
you don't even talk like that.
I know, but it's dry and disconnected. I'm putting on a show now. Whereas if we're coming from a place of openness and love, and we order the coffee, it's like, may I please have a decaf latte? I can feel my love for the moment, my openness towards the person who's so generously serving me, but also receiving that service. And then also the deliciousness of what I've just ordered and how that'll impact my body, and the love for that, the love that I have for that whole experience. That openness in my body is permeating the moment in a totally different way. And we're just talking about ordering a coffee.
Yes.
So that plays out with every interaction that we have. So the openness in the body translates to more love.
Yes.
And more love, like whether it's in intimate relationship, work and career, friendships, children, any area of life, that openness spills through us towards another, and it's felt, because people are like, you seem happy, or you seem this or that. And it's like, it's physically noticeable because it's embodied.
Yes.
If people are noticing it without me saying anything, then I'm embodying love in that moment. And that's a really delicious experience. And that's what we're talking about moving towards in this conversation about trust and an intimate relationship.
Yeah. Moving towards embodied love, embodied trust. And if you're watching this, you might notice I have a fluffy cream cat on my lap, because he thinks he can be wherever he wants. He trusts life a lot.
Yes, he's embodied love.
Well, is there anything else about trust to wind up today's episode, or do you feel complete?
We could talk a lot about it, but I think this is probably enough for today in terms of, like, there's plenty here, but also not too much. We haven't touched everything about it, but we've touched enough to give people an opportunity to inquire and look at trust and intimate relationships in a different way and a couple of different ways to apply it. It feels good.
And if you have any questions or anything arises, do leave a comment for us, because we can use that for future episodes and speak to it.
Yeah, beautiful.
Thank you.
Thank you. What I'm doing is having this impact on her right now.